Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
okay, first question. So many of us in our world today struggle, whether it is to pay the bills or look after our families and or suffer from a physical or mental illness or addiction. Do you have any words of advice or encouragement for those of us who find the struggle of life really hard going?
Yes, absolutely. And so you're now in a state of great rampant evolution. And what is happening is many of you are choosing to focus on what you consider an obstacle and suffering, as you call it, and problems, when all of your power in this dense world of yours is to focus your mind on the solution and not the problem. When you continue to focus on what is, you create more of what is. When you create more of what could possibly be, then you will focus on that dimension and it has to come to pass, you see. We want to share with you that it is a time to focus on not out of faith, not out of suffering. So if you continue to say, oh, I'm suffering, life is so hard, it's so terrible, and you try and stuff the void, what you deem a void, with different various addictions and drugs and sex and alcohol and even working out and whatever you do to fill the void rather than being present with all that is inside of you and turning within toward all the love and abundance and hope and health that is indeed inside of you and that is indeed in the many billions of dimensions beyond this dense one. If you could remember that you have been that way more often than you have been in this dimension, where you believe you could re-enter and remember that your thoughts always create your reality. Your thoughts always create your reality. You see, you are vibratory creatures. You're all made of energy. If you looked at your hand through a microscope, you wouldn't see something solid. You'd see something that was dynamic and moving. That is the truth of you. And so what happens is you go through somewhat of an amnesia when you re-enter this planet. Actually, when you're little children, you remember now, don't you? It is only when you get older and well-intentioned adults start telling you, quote, the reality of what is, which is that life is hard and that life is a struggle and that you must suffer to get ahead. And we are here to tell you it is the exact opposite. Remember what it was like to be a child and to play and pretend that you could do or have or be anything you wanted before the world told you otherwise. And you felt amazing and light and free. That is the truth of who you truly are. And in fact, you go off into your adolescence where you start to question yourself and have doubts and worries and fears, yes? Then you move on into adulthood and you work and work and work and you feel like you must have and gain and do and do and do. And then you go into old age if you're lucky and you remember what it's like to be a child again. You see, before you re-enter the great beyond, because we are here to remind you there are many, many, many dimensions beyond this one limited one that you see with your eyes. If you start closing your eyes and seeing from a heart space and aligning with the truth of who you really are, you would move past the suffering into faith and hope and even joy. Yes, joy. Because it is in that state of joy that you attract more joy. And when you radiate joy, it is contagious in a good way. It is where you attract all good things and opportunities and adventures, and others see that, and either they are excited about it and align with it and join you in creating an entire community and world of peace and love and joy, or they are so far gone that they are repelled by it, and they must go through their own soul agreement lessons, and you must let them be until they choose to slowly climb the ladder of emotion, because emotion is just vibration. Emotion is just vibration. We'll say that again, because many of you say, but, Power Fen, you don't understand. I'm sad and depressed and alone and angry, and we understand that. And we are not telling you to suggest otherwise. And yet, we want you to feel those emotions, embrace them, and then choose to move beyond that. Choose to
Okay.
move beyond that, because from that space, you will attract more of the same. And so what happens is, we'll give you an example right now in your world. And your entire continent of Australia is on fire. It's on fire. And everybody keeps posting pictures on your social media of how horrible it is and these terrible images. And as you focus on that, you're creating more of that. And yet, what is the solution? You see, many of you pray and focus and visualize. We want you to not just passively pray, but actively visualize rain pouring down on the country, which is already happening. And you can understand that from that contrast, what is the lesson? What is the opposite of that contrast? It's learning that indeed your planet, it's time to come together and understand that, yes, your climate is changing, and you need to keep up with that change and create new laws, not just for each individual state and country. Those are man-made boundaries. You see, it's time to come together as one world, as one spirit, expressing as each individual soul. You'll understand that when you die and move into the dimensions beyond this limited one. You see, you'll get it. But right now, if you could just choose to focus on the solution rather than the problem, your focus is everything. Before you incarnated into this lifetime, you chose with the entire power of God, source energy, love, whatever you want to call it. We like the word love because it is universal. So the entire force of love came beyond you, and you entered into this dimension where thoughts create form. You did that. You chose a family collective to learn from and grow. And now here you are. If you could create something from nothing, from that dimension of all that is, of bliss and love and joy, and now come into this world of polarities and contrast and learn, really learn what you don't want. Because from that suffering, you can say, ooh, that's not what I want. What do I want? And then move from there. What do I want?
And you may have covered some of this question already. It strikes me that it is often very hard to stay in alignment if you have a physical or mental illness or an addiction, because very often there is a chemical or physical imbalance. Is there anything people suffering with these problems can do to stay in alignment or balance more, in your view, that is perhaps not very common knowledge?
Yes, yes. And so we would say that when you have what you deem mental illness, okay, let's break that up. You have a mind, you have a brain that thinks. And again, when you die, you no longer have a physical brain, you are part of the collective. But as you are a part of this earth and you exist as a human being, sometimes you have chemical imbalances. But we'd also like to offer you something of hope, that this earth, this planet provides so many plants and organisms and minerals. There is something to heal everyone. You just don't always look hard enough for it or share that information, because often people get greedy and give you chemical answers that often creates more damage and more side effects than good. But there is an answer you just keep having to ask, what is the solution? And listen to your intuition to guide you there. We would also like to offer that many of what you call mental illness are just highly intuitive people that are called crazy by the greater collective because they don't understand it. Many of your native tribes welcomed people who were highly intuitive, and they were considered shamans and chiefs and medicine people. You see, it's all in your perception of what you deem mental illness. Many of you feel like you're depressed or mentally ill because you're in a society that is very upsetting. You keep watching the news, which focuses on the negative, and you feel bad, and you're not in alignment with that. You know that there's a higher truth, and so it feels bad. Pain feels bad. Being around other toxic people feels bad. Be around those who light you up, who love you, who feel good. Be out in nature. This world of yours is absolutely beautiful. If you feel sad or upset or angry or alone, go find a plot of grass or a waterfall or a pond or an ocean. Everywhere in your world is beauty. It's focusing on the good. There is always something to do to focus on the good. So yes, that's one part of it. You can perhaps have a chemical imbalance that needs balancing. There's perhaps your focus that could change, perhaps people that could help you point the direction towards your healing. And yet the other part is trauma. You see, what is trauma? So again, we go back to how we started this wonderful conversation with when you're a child, you come straight from the other higher realm where you understood love and peace and bliss and play. That's why so many of you are attracted to the light and love of babies or pets or animals, because you see, they are in the present. They just worry about if they soil their diapers or they're hungry, and that's it. And they cry and they let you know. They're very present, you see. They know what it is. And yet, some adults they are so sad and so immersed in the negativity of the world and how they can't get ahead and focus on their problems, that being around that much love and light is almost painful. And so they spread that despair to their own children or other people's children in terms of teachers or any type of position where you interact with the next generation. And yet there is hope, because with each evolving generation, they are more intuitive, more filled with the light. There is such a thing as evolution, spiritually, physically, on every level. And they're being born into more accepting families that don't reject what they have to teach, yes? You see it. Little children see spirit. They aren't guarded yet. They are not turned away by the rest of the world. So there's hope with each generation. Applaud each generation. Yes, it may be different from what you grew up with, and different isn't always bad. What happens with trauma is when a young child who is full of hope and light is abused in some way, physically, mentally, spiritually, you see. And yet, when a child survives that, and if you believe in many lifetimes, as we are here to suggest that there are many, you are all old spirits. You're not special if you think you're an old spirit. All of you are at this point in time. There may be some young souls, but they're certainly not listening into this call right now. Old souls have been around, and all of you have been through trauma. You see, there are dark ages in every single country, yes, where you've been beheaded and gone through horrible atrocities. And yet, you have this beautiful gift of amnesia when you enter a new incarnation, and yet deep down in your subconscious mind that's collected to all of spirits, you know you've been through that trauma. And yet, what would happen if you knew and focused on every trauma that your soul's ever experienced? You'd be depressed constantly. And so you get a chance to renew with each lifetime. You get a chance to renew every morning you wake up, and you choose to focus on what you're grateful for, on the fact that you get to live out another day, that you can choose the emotions to feel, that even if it's as simple as you're here and you have a bed, because many don't. That's how important gratitude is, and we're not the only teachers to tell you that, but it's true. You focus more on more, and because that becomes a habit. You focus on the fact that the sky is blue, or even that it's cloudy and that it's raining, because it depends on the part of the world. Right now it's raining in Australia, and that's a good thing. More of that, more of that. Beautiful in your world. Focus on the trees that are growing, on the flowers wherever you are, and the fact that you are able to breathe. That is a beautiful gift, and lift yourself up one vibratory emotion at a time. It may be slow. You may be in physical pain. And then you can remember a time when you didn't have physical pain. And then you take your mind to a place that's beautiful, a wonderful memory. Perhaps you're on the beach, or with good friends, or playing with a child, or tasted a good meal. And then you bring yourself emotionally out of that, so you feel a little less physical or emotional pain. And now you start to feel hopeful again, because hopefulness is the turning point, where you lift yourself out of a state of low vibrational, emotional ick to something a little higher. And now you know that the higher realms are possible. And then you start to feel more positive. And then it's okay. You see, you realize that, you realize that you can move yourself out of doubt and into a state of love, an unconditional love that accepts and embraces everything, and realizes that there is no good or bad, right or wrong in the afterlife. There only just is. And the same is true for you now. There only is just is. When you stop labeling things as good or bad or right or wrong, you start lifting yourself into a state of peace. And from that peace and freedom, you gain abundance and health and wealth and joy and radiance, where you can give back, and then you recycle it all. You see, once you gain a state of abundance and prosperity, it's not all bad unless you hoard it. You want to give freely, and then you give to others, then everyone is happy. You see, when it's circulatory, when you give back and it feels good from that state of plenty. You see, that's what we hope for you all, that you come from this place where you realize the power that you contain within, to focus on that next level. Maybe you don't jump from despair to joy right away. That would be ridiculous. But you can jump ahead from despair to perhaps hope, and then peace, and then freedom, because your internal state is freedom. You have that within you, no matter what the external states of yourself or the world. You see, when you can get to that place, we guarantee that, yes, the law of attraction is going to magnetize all beautiful things your way. It comes from a state of exhilaration, because you live in the vibratory universe. And so, yes, you have to look at what are you attracting in your life, but you can switch out of that. If you're attracting people that attack you, perhaps you're not an attacking negative person, but perhaps you're seeing yourself through the lens of a victimhood, or from this idea that everything bad happens to me. If you're telling yourself that deep down, even if it's not conscious, that's who you are attracting. Change up the dialogue. In your mind, when you hear that negative thing that was probably told to you by some adult at some point in your life, say, no, that's not for me now. I choose to live a life of joy and peace and abundance, so that I may radiate that truth and impact all who are around me. We hope that answered the question.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.